Oh, hello there! When we think of maritime republics of the Middle and Modern Ages, we usually think of Venice, right? Some who know more about history would say Ancona, Genoa, Pisa, or even Amalfi. These maritime republics situated themselves on the Apennine Peninsula where Italy currently lies. But what if I were to say that on the other side of the Adriatic Sea, on the other peninsula that is known as the Balkans, lay a small maritime republic that resisted Venetian domination, avoided Ottoman conquest, and possibly owned a colony in India? This is the story of Republic of Ragusa, or Dubrovačka Republika, a picturesque place that's now part of Croatia, and a famous tourist destination because of that one show that I can't remember the name of. Was it the Throne of Games? For a state which managed to remain independent for 450 years, one wonders, how did they manage to stay free for that long? And how did they compare to the maritime republics based in Italy? And what was that about a colony in India? This and much more on today's episode. Our story begins in Cavtat, a nice coastal town some 18 kilometers from Dubrovnik, which in ye olde time was called Epidaurus, that was established as a small Greek colony in the 6th century BC, which was then occupied by the Romans following the end of the Illyrian Wars. The town thrived during the imperial era, but by the 7th century AD it became a shell of its former self, and the town was sacked and destroyed by the Avars and Slavs who were fighting amongst one another and causing chaos around the region, due to the invasion of these two peoples into the northern regions of the Byzantine Empire. The refugees fled north, and after a short journey saw the small Lapat Peninsula, which may have been an island during that time, and established a new settlement, Lausa, which over time morphed into Ragusa. The Slavs settled next to Ragusa a few years later and named their settlement Dubrovnik, which comes from the word Dubrava, meaning an oak grove. The two, obviously, didn't like one another, with the refugees being Romans whose previous settlement was destroyed by them, who now have to share a coast with their new Slavic neighbors. But over the following centuries, the two settlements became friendlier with one another and merged together to become one town, Dubrovnik. During its first few centuries, Dubrovnik was under Byzantine protection, but by the 10th century, the Byzantine strength in the Balkans became weak, and a power vacuum was formed, prompting the Venetian Republic from the other side of the Adriatic to bring Dubrovnik under its control, as it saw a potential trading rival should it become independent. Geography played a role in the justification for the territorial expansion of Venice due to the way the Adriatic Sea flows, going downstream from Italy and upstream from the Western Balkan. Thus, having control of the islands and coastal towns was key for Venetian trade, to have the ships sail faster, to rest and repair their ships while going upstream, and most importantly to avoid paying the Dutch or Croatia safe passage. For this reason, up until the 11th century, Venice waged multiple wars against the Duchy and the Dalmatian pirates in order to avoid paying tribute for safe passage upstream. But then they started paying again after their fleet was destroyed in 887 by the Narentine pirates, a South Slavic tribe situated on modern-day Neretva Valley. As for attacks on Ragusa, the most famous one was the failed siege on 3rd of February 972, which is attributed by the intervention of Saint Blaise, or Blage, whose feast is celebrated on that day, and who, according to legend, appeared in front of a priest named Stoico, who was deep in a night prayer, and told him about the impending attack by the Venetians, prompting Stoico to alert the town. Seeing how their surprise attack failed, they pulled back onto the shore. Thus, every 3rd of February, the citizens of Dubrovnik celebrate their patron saint for saving the town, and he became the symbol of the Republic. Up until 1205, Dubrovnik was, as previously mentioned, under Byzantine control, but that changed during the disastrous Fourth Crusade, where Venice invaded Dalmatia with the help of the Crusaders, and Dubrovnik ended up becoming a tributary state. 346 kilometers north, however, the city of Zara, or Zara today, was unfortunately a target of Venice, and with the help of the Crusaders, besieged and captured the city. The city used to be under Venetian control, but then it rebelled and placed itself under the protection of Hungary. And Venice was dying to get it back, because of the geography, remember? And the Fourth Crusade was a great opportunity to get Dalmatia in one fell swoop, since Venice had the ships needed to transport the troops to the Holy Land. Thus, the city of Dubrovnik became a tributary state of Venice for the next 153 years, paying more and more in tributes as the years went by, to the great displeasure of the aristocracy in Dubrovnik that was slowly being formed from the descendants of the Epidaurus refugees and from the Italian noble families that immigrated to Dubrovnik. These were the families that would go on to create an independent republic, but they just needed the right time and the right opportunity. And that time came in 1358, when the numerous conflicts between Venice and the Kingdom of Hungary finally ended with the Treaty of Zadar. Talk about a throwback, huh? That made Venice relinquish all their territory in Dalmatia to Hungary, and it was here that Dubrovnik had a new suzerain, but this time the city-state had de facto independent rule, and not like before under Venetian administration, where a Venetian was the head of the government, with its only obligation being yearly tribute and de jure obedience to the Hungarian kings. The Republic of Ragusa in the following centuries became a maritime power during its peak in the 15th and 16th century, rivaling its former master Venice. If you haven't guessed it already, Ragusa always wanted to stick it up to Venice, or Mlečny as Croatians would say. The 14th century saw the Republic beginning to develop itself into an advanced and progressive city-state, like those on the Italian peninsula. It was also a state with many firsts. In 1317, a pharmacy was opened in a Franciscan monastery that's still in function today, making it the oldest continuously open pharmacy to date. Though, as always, disputes are going on about this when you define what a pharmacy is. During the Venetian rule of Dubrovnik in the 13th century, many ideas about healthcare were being shared within the city walls from Italy, especially from the medical school in Salerno, where the Ragusan government employed physicians that were educated there. We can even see in the Statute of 1272, where among the mentioning of the organization of firefighters, maritime law, and city planning, it also mentions the organization of healthcare, the sewage system, and how waste was to be disposed of. Ragusa is also the very first one to invent the quarantine system. Yup, the same ones that you and I were in a few years back. Ships were the biggest disease carriers, and most notably the carrier of the Black Death, which oversaw the death of at least 75 million lives, along with other future plagues. So on 27th of July 1377, the Great Council enacted a law that those visiting must stay in a camp on one of the numerous islands, called the Lazaretto, for 30 days to suppress the spread of plague. This system, called the Trentine, was updated 20 years later to extend the period to 40 days, called the Quarantena. There was also an insurance law introduced in 1395, and an orphanage was opened in 1432, the first of its kind, with many cultural and artistic works being developed by famous Ragusans, and so many more works were built during this massive and impressive rise of this tiny republic, most famously the city walls that were defined in the 14th century, yet saw continuous improvement over the next centuries. To what did the republic owe this great success? These impressive and rather liberal advancements were created by a very rigid social structure ruled by a strict aristocracy, divided into the three social classes: the aforementioned noble families, who had all high offices and were in charge of the government, then the citizens and the plebeians. These three classes were prohibited from marrying amongst one another, which was solidified by the 1332 statute, where from that point on, no new noble families were introduced in the city. It was a harsh divide for certain, but it made a functioning society with a penchant for diplomacy, trading, and a little bit of double-crossing, and all of this would culminate in a golden age in the following centuries. The 15th and the 16th century were the golden age of the Ragusa Republic. 1427 saw the final acquisition of the Republic's last part of territory that would for the most part stay the same until the very end. It was a compact area that had all the necessities, especially access to fresh water from the River Ombla that supplied the city. The Republic consisted of the mainland coast from Neum to the Prevlaka Peninsula, the southernmost point in modern Croatia, as well as the islands of Lastovo and Mljet, with numerous smaller islands. It is estimated that by the end of the 16th century, the Republic was home to around 50,000 people, a large part who were noble families. Although slavery wasn't as common in the Middle Ages as it would be after the discovery of the New World by Europeans, it was still practiced, despite the somewhat social stigma of a Christian owning a Christian slave. That didn't stop them from owning pagan, Jewish, or Muslim ones, and although there have been decrees throughout Europe limiting slavery and serfdom, it wasn't outright banned. But the Republic was the first state in Europe to abolish all types of slavery and slave trading on 27th of January 1416. Because if it wasn't obvious up until this point, Dubrovnik had a very high emphasis of liberty, and it would appear hypocritical to have chattel in a republic that wants to stay independent. Dubrovnik was very skilled in maintaining relations, having an excellent squad of diplomats being sent all around Europe, but was notably good friends with the Republic of Ancona, as being on the opposite sides of the Adriatic helped restrict the maritime movement of, you guessed it, Venice. Man, something tells me that Dubrovnik really doesn't like Venice. From London to Alexandria and everywhere in between, the Maritime Republic kept all sorts of contacts via the numerous consulates on the shores of the Mediterranean, because you never know when you might need immediate help from a kingdom your consulate is in. Most of the trading was done, obviously, by the sea, but around a quarter of Ragusan trade was held inland with the neighboring Bosnia, which was wealthy in silver mines, but was also a valuable source of gold, lead, iron, and other materials. When the Ottomans became the new suzerain, spices, silk, oriental perfumes, grains, and raw materials flowed in the Mediterranean. Ragusa had manufacturing abilities of their own, owning salt mines, producing olive oil, wine, and other manufactured goods, while bringing back textiles, luxury clothes, jewelry, glass, and other items obtained through trading. The ships that would sail across the seas bringing in these goods were known as carraca, or argosy in English, a distortion of the word Ragusa, were made of great quality designed by expert craftsmen, even beating Venice in the shipbuilding department. Man, Venice can't catch a break, huh? A single argosy was manned by a crew of around 150 sailors, equipped up to 40 cannons for defense, bringing along many skilled craftsmen on board should there be a need for any repairs. Though the Republic's main interest was trading, it didn't shy away from naval warfare, as some of the merchant ships were a part of the failed Spanish invasion of England in 1588, which to their fortune England didn't notice, and subsequently notified the Ottomans about this ill act. The Republic also gave birth to very important literary works by Ivan Gundulić and Marin Držić, who wrote many plays in Croatian, the commoner's tongue, while upper classes spoke in Italian. And although he lived well past the Golden Age, Đurđa Bošković is famous for his advancements in astronomy and other sciences that he worked on in the 18th century. These three men are considered to be a national pride in Croatia, where their names and faces can be found all over the country. The government responsible for this golden age was oligarchic in nature, made up of male aristocracy, separated in three houses: the minor council, the major council, and the senate, with a rector appointed as the head of the government, a primus inter pares, the first among equals, for a very short period of 1 month, with a possible re-election after 2 years. This was made to restrict any kind of power accumulation, as Florence saw with the Medici, and it was a great system of suppressing any kind of attempt at a hereditary rule, like what Venice saw in its early stages. In October of 1458, Ragusa became a vassal state of the Ottoman Empire, where they paid annual tribute to the sultans in Constantinople of around 12,500 ducats a year. But wait, you might ask, isn't Hungary its suzerain? How can one state have two suzerains? And why didn't the Ottomans control the Republic directly? The answer? Diplomacy. Dubrovnik valued its liberty very highly, and it's no surprise that their motto stated, "Liberty is not sold for all of the gold in the world." While their ensign on their merchant ships had the word Libertas written on it. It's no surprise, given how many times the city-state was under someone else's rule, and wanted to end that, even if they needed to pay tribute to their much more powerful neighbors, in this case, the Ottomans. Only in 1526, after the Battle of Mohacs, that the Ottomans became the sole suzerain. The Ottomans also had value in keeping the Maritime Republic independent, as Ragusa had access to a lot of information about the East and the West through trading. Espionage was cream and butter for some Ragusans, the most famous ones being Marin Zamanja from the local nobility, who was close friends with the Holy Roman Emperor Charles V, the most powerful man in Europe of his time. With their advanced diplomatic skills, Dubrovnik regained its independence by paying the aforementioned tribute, but this just made the Republic much stronger. As an exchange, it was able to trade with the Ottomans, who now controlled the spice trade, while the rest of Europe, especially Venice, who threw hands with Turks from time to time, couldn't. Dubrovnik did business in the Adriatic in place of the Ottomans, and had new trade routes available to it, like the Black Sea and the Red Sea, where they were tax-exempt in the Ottoman ports. This, coupled with a plethora of aforementioned continents scattered across the Mediterranean, that made it easier to do business there, and made Dubrovnik one of the strongest maritime powers of the Eastern Mediterranean, all thanks to the hegemony of the Turks, while still maintaining great relations with the Western kingdoms. Okay, but what about the Indian colony that the Republic had? Was it real? Maybe? In the 16th century, in order to improve the spice trade, a trading port was apparently established in the Goa region, which was administered by the Portuguese. There it is said that they established the settlement of São Brás, where now the village of Candalium is. The name São Brás, translated from Portuguese, is same place, the patron saint of Dubrovnik, and by contemporary sources, it had around 12,000 people living in it. There's still a lot of mystery to be solved about this supposed Ragusan colony, if it was even that, or just a mere trading post, but what we do know is as the 17th century rolled around, and as the Western Europe shifted their focus to the New World, the Republic began to see a decline, as there was less trading activity going for the Ottoman Empire. And then the earthquake happened. Dubrovnik is a very seismically active zone, being huddled between the Dinaric Alps in a thin strip of land, which is the only area in Croatia where the strongest earthquakes can happen. Already in 1520 and 1639, earthquakes occurred where they damaged the city. Believing it to be a sign of God's wrath, the Ragusans built the church of Saint Saber to protect them against future earthquakes. This, however, would not save them for what came next. On the 6th of April 1667, around 8 in the morning, a 6.4 Richter scale earthquake occurred, devastating effect. Around 3,000 to 5,000 people perished, along with the rector and many members of the government. The scene was apocalyptic. A major part of the city was reduced to rubble, with fires blazing for 20 days, cracks appearing on the earth, drying up the water sources and damaging the water infrastructure, causing water shortages, along with a tsunami that occurred later, crashing the ships onto the shore. It was total anarchy, where thieves, rich and poor, stole whatever riches were hiding underneath the rubble. With great haste, the remaining nobility formed a Council of 12, who took quick action to restore order, issuing an order for every citizen to help in the reconstruction of the city. Diplomacy once more played a key role in the survival of the Republic. Stjepan Gradić, a diplomat that was in the Papal States, who tirelessly worked to restore the city and the surrounding area, hiring architects, workers, materials, food, money, and kept writings on how the whole restoration was to play out, and how much money there would be spent, among other works. The recovery of Dubrovnik can largely be attributed to him, who helped the Republic get back on its feet while it was in a total catastrophe. Severely wounded but still pushing through, it continued on throughout the 18th century under Ottoman guardianship. In 1699, Ragusa seceded the aforementioned thin strip of land called Neum to create a buffer from Venice, out of fear of an attack by land, after the Great Turkish War, which is why Bosnia now has a 12-kilometer long access to the Adriatic, and why Croatia built a bridge to avoid a corridor. That land wasn't any help though, as the Ottomans were getting pushed back by the Austrians in the 18th century, and to once more preserve their libertas, began paying 500 ducats in tribute to the Habsburgs, now that the Ottoman power in the Balkans was becoming contested. But not every country lasts forever. In 1804, well into the Napoleonic Wars, the liberty of Dubrovnik fell into the French hands. After a tense standoff between the French and the Russo-Montenegrin forces, they were both keen on capturing the strategically important city. After the Peace of Pressburg in 1805, Austrians were forced to cede Dalmatia to France, along with a tiny strip of land in Mar de Montenegro, which used to be Venetian after the partition of the Republic, but the Austrians gave it to the Russians. The French were pressuring the city to be let in, to which they swiftly occupied it under the command of Jacques Lauriston and Auguste de Marmont, which became a part of the Illyrian provinces in 1809. The soldiers took control of government buildings and sealed the gates. The aristocracy, with great shock and sadness, dispersed quietly. After Napoleon's withdrawal from Russia, and seeing how fortune was on the coalition side, the Ragusan created a provisional administration in hopes of restoring the Republic, but soon the Austrians arrived to occupy it, doing their very best at the Congress of Vienna to make no mention of the Republic in order to control the valuable city position, not to mention how nobody really mentioned it in the first place. And so, the history of the Republic came to a close, not with a bang, but with a whimper. Though it's now gone, the citizens still celebrate its history and culture every year, so that the Ragusan Republic is not forgotten. And with that, the class is dismissed. If you'd like to see more content like this, be sure to like and subscribe so you don't miss out on any future uploads, and comment down below to express your undying love towards your country. Take care and see you around in a month.